Hello, my name's Philip Dawson and I'd like to talk with you about the scholarship of learning and teaching. So let's start with a guessing game. In what area can you conduct research without having studied in the area? Without having actually read research in that area? Without an understanding of the relevant methodologies to that area? And you can even publish without having any data at all? And you can even get research grants without a track record. Well, if you guessed astrophysics, you're wrong because the answer is Scholarship of Learning and Teaching. This is a field that I am situated within, but I can tell you from the inside that it's got its problems, and I'll talk with you about some of the problems today and some of the great things too. So we'll define the Scholarship of Learning and Teaching. I'll talk a little bit about methodology. We'll talk career paths. This could be your future career. It is mine. I'm quite enjoying it. And then sort of wrap up by saying, do you want to be an excellent, expert or scholarly teacher, and what do those labels mean? So how do we define SOTL or SALT? Because we say Scholarship of Learning and Teaching, but we say SOTL. It's a weird historical thing. I think it became fancy to put learning before teaching because by doing that you put learning before teaching or something like that. But the definitions, in addition to the acronym, are contested. And most have some sort of an ultimate goal of improving learning. We'll have a look at a few definitions now. SOTL is scholarly inquiry into student learning, which advances the practice of teaching by making research findings public. That's from the Wikipedia article about SOTL, and it's curated by iSOTL, which is the International Society for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. Okay, I'll buy this. Scholarly inquiry into student learning, so it's a learning-focused thing rather than a teaching-focused thing. Oh wait, it advances the practice of teaching by making findings public. So it's mostly about research into learning and the teaching stuff associated with it. Cool. Here's another one. The aim of scholarly teaching is also simple. It is to make transparent how we have made learning possible. For this to happen, university teachers must be informed of the theoretical perspectives and literature of teaching and learning in their discipline, and be able to collect and present rigorous evidence of their effectiveness from these perspectives as teachers. In turn, this involves reflection, inquiry, evaluation, documentation, and communication. This is Trigwell et al.'s, and it's more complex than just doing research about learning. It's making that transparent. It's also about informing teachers of theory and literature about teaching and learning, and particularly teaching and learning in their discipline. If you're an accounting educator, your discipline will have specific literature that's different to the engineering education literature. Collect and present rigorous evidence of their effectiveness. Yeah, sure, that's in the other definition. Reflection, inquiry, evaluation, documentation, and communication. So it's starting to sound like a pretty rigorous field of research. And here is Sally Kift's definition here. It's the difference between doing this much, which is vision, design, outcomes, and this much, ethics, evaluation, and analysis. So as regular good teachers, we do the vision, design, outcomes stuff. We design a course, we make it good, we check that students have met these outcomes. But it's actually about taking it to the next step, getting ethics approval to do research on that, conducting some sort of an evaluation of your approach, your methods, and doing some analysis of that. Interestingly, there's not a mention of sharing the results of that, which there was in our other two definitions. Now, I mentioned Kift here because Kift is someone who's had quite a stratospheric career rise through doing this Scholarship of Learning and Teaching stuff. I believe she's a Deputy Vice-Chancellor now, and she's built her career around this. Now, as with a lot of things I'll talk with you about, I have a personal critique of it. I'll just lay it out there so that you know my thoughts. It privileges publishing grants and awards. SOTL says that all those things that we talked about before, they're how to make learning and teaching good. You've got to publish research, you've got to get learning and teaching research grants, you've got to get awards, and that this can lead to personal glory for the scholarly teacher, which is a good thing. We do want good teachers to be rewarded, don't we? Okay. Also, methodologically poor studies that are atheoretical, don't connect to the literature and make little impact. As you've been reading about learning and teaching, have you come across some studies that have just left you a bit, oh, why did you bother with that? Did you really have to publish that? Was that really so amazing? Is that really of interest to anyone else? Have you come across those sorts of studies? I worry that the field of SOTL, and it's us encouraging people to do it, can lead to a bunch of publishing for the sake of racking up the points, which kind of messes up a field of research. And it encourages teachers to write and do, but not read. So you'll get rewarded for getting your good setu, you'll get rewarded for getting your good publications, but what about the reading that's necessary to improve that learning and teaching? You might have read some education research literature in higher ed that doesn't have a very good lit review. As a journal editor, I even sometimes receive articles that don't have any review of the literature. Obviously those get returned pretty quickly. And it does not necessarily improve outcomes for students, particularly if we take those first couple of definitions of SOTL. We can't really guarantee any students are getting better learning outcomes as a result of that. So it's sort of problematic. I think if you want to make an excellent educational decision, you should read a review study. You probably know that about me by now. I think reading should come before doing, as it does in a lot of other disciplines. The role of review studies is, well, rather than evaluate something that we've done at the end, we should perhaps examine the evidence before we do something. And a review study can look at all of the evidence for you and inform what you do. So rather than doing the evaluation at the end of a piece of educational innovation, we should evaluate the evidence first, and Pawson argues that that's a role for systematic review and other methods like it. Review studies bring together what we know about a topic. They make research accessible and efficient. Reading one review study is a lot quicker than reading many single studies. They provide a starting point. They guide future research and policy. Some review studies even say the sort of research we can stop doing is this. And in an ideal world, SOTL would realise that it has enough research studies that are small-scale intervention studies of a rather unimpressive thing, and it would move on. If you've heard me talk about assessment research, for instance, you'll remember back to, I believe it was some of the stuff about assessment futures that sort of says a lot of assessment research looks at small-scale things and doesn't connect to a lot of the other assessment research. Review studies can tie that stuff together. Now, as far as a more positive take on SOTL, here is a grab from a Trigwell et al. Article. It's up there, I've got a link. If you want, I guess, a more rigorous, positive, useful way of considering, are we scholarly teachers or not? And you can see that they've divided it up into a number of dimensions and a number of different levels. So if we take, say, this informed dimension here of being a scholarly teacher, part of being a scholarly teacher in Trigwell's definition was to be informed, and ranging from sort of informal theories of teaching and learning, those hunches that you have about how students learn, and then a more scholarly teacher is progressively moving down here. So some people are engaging with the literature of teaching and learning generally, then some people engage with the literature, particularly the discipline literature. Journal of Engineering Education would promote a certain understanding of learning and teaching that would be very different to an art and design journal. And sort of at this highest level, Trigwell say that someone is conducting action research and having synoptic capacity, pedagogic content knowledge, having that understanding of the intersection between pedagogical approaches and the discipline, and a deep knowledge about how they interrelate to each other. So just so that I give you something that is pretty credible as a definition of SOTL and a framework, here's Trigwell et al.'s. And I've talked a little bit about how we have studies that are not that great, but a good thing is that in SOTL, the research methodologies of your discipline are acceptable if they're done well. So this is a great thing. If you've ever thought, I'd like to get involved with higher education research, but I don't know how, if you know how to do research in your discipline, I can almost guarantee someone would love to have you on a research team in a higher education project because it's of use somehow to them. I'm a pragmatist. There's a reference to Badley there. I try to choose the appropriate method or methodology for the appropriate question and avoid some sort of qualitative-quantitative false dichotomy. If you think that nothing valuable can be said with numbers about education, then I disagree with you. If you think the only things valuable to be said about education can be said with numbers, then I disagree with you. I think there's a role for both qualitative and quantitative. And if you've ever thought, I'd like to get involved with higher education research, but I'm a qualitative researcher, therefore I can't, or I'm a quant researcher, therefore I can't, you can. We want to have you on the team. But bad research is still bad scholarship of teaching and learning. The sort of qualitative paper that's just got cherry-picked quotes. You know, what did the students like about this intervention that we did, and we picked the ones that sound the best. That's some sort of bad bastardization of thematic analysis and does not go down too well. And similarly, dodgy statistics that you make no claims that they are not generalizable, or you don't consider the limitations of them, or their statistical significance or their practical significance. So I would like you to come and join us as higher education researchers and bring with you your high quality methodologies. And there is a career path for you if you want to come join us. So Scholarship of Learning and Teaching has this idea of, a beginning teacher, and this is Kift's conception of it. And as I said before, she's the Deputy Vice-Chancellor now. And progressively becoming more scholarly as the career goes on. So I don't know where you're at right now, but you're potentially working towards a qualification in university teaching. So you're partway through this progression. If you have a publication on learning and teaching in higher education, you're a little bit further. If you're in a learning and teaching leadership position, or you mentor other people, you're a bit further again. If you find yourself having trouble talking about your learning and teaching scholarship in a promotion application or a performance review, maybe you could consider this work by Kift as a way to show that you're actually more advanced in this field than others might think you are. So you say, but I just want to be a good teacher, not a pseudo-education researcher. So I haven't convinced you that you should come and join us and do this great learning and teaching research and make learning and teaching better, not just where you are, but everywhere. You just want to be a good teacher. Well, that's admirable, and I actually think it's fantastic. But do you want to be excellent, expert, or scholarly? And what is the difference? Well, if we go with Kreber's distinctions between these, an excellent teacher is someone that gets great student evaluations, has really good learning outcomes, and they might even get teaching awards. They're just a good teacher. These people are ideally the majority of people at a university. That's what we want. Or you might want to be an expert teacher. Now, an expert teacher goes beyond an excellent teacher and is able to articulate a rationale for why they do their learning and teaching the way that they do it. They might have evidence for why they do it. This evidence might come from some sort of systematicity in how they do things and how they evaluate their work. And they might have some sort of learning and teaching qualifications as well. So an expert teacher is the excellent teacher who's able to tell you why and I guess really articulate the rationale for good learning and teaching. And the scholarly teacher is the expert teacher who also studies, analyses, publishes their learning and teaching. They might review for academic journals about learning and teaching. And At the end of the day, they are the ones who advance education beyond their own context. Now, there's a lot of a push to become a scholarly teacher, but as far as being someone who's really good to your own students, I want you to be an excellent teacher. The other stuff's a pretty big career move that, you might actually like doing your disciplined research and not want to take away from that. I respect that. So, when you hear people talking about scholarship of learning and teaching and we want people to be scholarly, ask yourself, do I want to be excellent, expert, or scholarly in my learning and teaching? And if you pick any one of those three, you've made me very happy. Thanks a lot.